Hello, and thank you for joining us for a talk about Mount Washington Valley real estate. This evening we'll be covering some discussion on property values, what we are seeing, market trends both nationally and locally, and can we expect a correction in the market soon? For you personally, is now a good time for you to sell, buy, or build? These would be some great, if you've got hesitation about moving forward with your real estate needs, this would be a great time to ask questions of our panel of experts. Those questions can be asked at the end of the presentation. We're going to have a Q&A session then. Our panel of experts will include Brendan Battenfelder. He is a North Conway resident and he works out of our North Conway office, followed by Diane McGregor. She works out of our Jackson office and is a Bartlett resident, longtime Bartlett resident, as well as Kathleen Sullivan Head, who works out of our Jackson office. A big thank you goes out to our sponsor this evening, Northway Bank. Ed Harrigan will be present for any finance questions that you may have, and this may include new construction loans, mortgages, interest rates, or things of that sort. All right, so without any further ado, let's dig into the presentation.
I think you'll see a lot of headlines in what's happening in the market right now, and who's out there looking at the homes that are on the market. And it's a pretty diverse setup at this point still. Primary home buyers are out there, and we've a lot of the agents in our office are consistently working with primary home buyers who are looking to either move to the valley, or some even still looking to move up in the valley. Buyers, we're certainly seeing that. Most people living in the valley are aware of that. We have been a vacation destination probably since the turn of the century, if not the prior turn of the prior century. It's been a long history here in the Mount Washington Valley. So vacation home buyers are certainly a big part of the current economy in the current market here. I would say that they are a strong proponent of the buyers who are pushing the pricing higher in the valley. Moving on to other buyers, retirement buyers are certainly here. We see that maybe more in the middle and upper end of the market. There's some retirement movement here. Also a little bit in the new construction realm, that people moving here for retirement purposes are looking at new construction as an option. And one second here, and then investment buying. So I think those are four of kind of the main categories of people you're going to see who are coming to a buying opportunity. Primary home buyers, vacation home buyers, we see a lot of retirement opportunities, and investment buying. Investment buying gets a lot of attention, certainly has in the Conway media these days, but it doesn't make up as strong of a market share as some might think. Because of our pricing, the investors are being pretty savvy about what they're picking up. So although they're definitely a component, and they always have been in our market, I think they're getting a lot more press than they are putting in the offers. There is a tremendous demand. We're seeing a strong demand throughout the price points. I'd say between 325 and 500 is where we're seeing a lot of activity. We're seeing, you're hearing those headline stories of multiple offers, 14 offers on one property. And that is kind of that middle price point that's getting a lot of attention. Below the 325, there's still plenty of activity. I showed a house listed at 275 last week. We got there were people in the house looking. We left, there were people right behind us. So there's still activity. The higher end market, the 5 to $1 million, if you look into the inventory, it is getting gobbled up, maybe albeit a little bit slower. Over $1 million, there certainly is activity there. I like to say it's much more of a personal activity. It's not 14 people in the driveway. It's personal relationships that buyers are developing with regions and certain types of homes that they're looking for. So that market is a little bit more nuanced, still a good bit of activity, but it's taking it's a more personal approach. You're seeing less buyer activity, but still very well qualified buyers. And I'd say in the vacation home sector, retirement home sector, looking at that price point.
Them at home again for the first time. And so if they had a condo here and all of a sudden their 26-year-old is home learning, the condo's not big enough. They want a primary home. If they had a primary home, they may be looking for a larger primary home. So generally speaking, the trend is for people to create a more substantial space that's more of a primary space and less of a vacation home. What that leads to is, of course, what Brendan was talking about, increased demand. We're seeing lots of multiple offers on the few homes that are available, and the severe lack of supply. We happen to have one of the most sought after locations in the country right now. New Hampshire is seeing higher growth than a lot of other places, Florida also in the nation. And we're seeing people come here from New York, from Boston, from Connecticut, and they're establishing a temporary primary residence here for the short term and possibly permanent. We'll see how that goes. The big question that we have, and I'm looking into my crystal ball, I could be rich if I could answer the question, is what about a correction? Most people who are on the meeting, I know a lot of you, have seen one adjustment, have watched the real estate ride up and down once. A lot of people have seen it twice, and if we see it this time, it'll be my third time. So the questions that people ask is, when's it going to happen? Is it going to be a big adjustment? And how's it going to affect the overall economy? So there's three factors. The general opinion of myself and a lot of people is there's three factors that are really going to soften that correction this time. When it's going to happen, where it's going to happen. There's three significant factors affecting values right now that will soften the correction if and when it happens. Those three factors are the equity that people have in their homes, the low interest rates, and the buyer demands. What we're seeing an average gain in equity right now of over 26,300. That's almost a 16% increase. And how that equates to real dollars, and if you look at the lower left-hand corner of this slide, you'll see that 38% of people who own homes now don't have a mortgage at all. So say, for instance, there's a hypothetical adjustment in the market that causes a decline in values, and we see a 10, 15, 20% decline in that value. Most of our homeowners right now can afford to lose up to 16% equity in their home. They've positioned themselves with their purchases so that they have affordable houses without a lot of pressure on their monthly expenses. So what that means in terms of a correction is that if things start to downturn in the economy, a lot of the people who are buying right now in this escalated market can afford to hold on to their houses and can afford to hold on to them with a reduction in value. So they could take a 20%, a 30% reduction in value. If they decide they need to sell, they can still sell that home and not be upside down, which is different than our last correction. This is really interesting. It gives a state by state example of how much equity is being held in homes. In New Hampshire, we've had an increase of 36,000 in the average mortgage. Nationally, it's 26,300. So that's quite a bit of equity that people can afford to take a hit in terms of a correction. The next thing that's going to really soften any correction that happens coming forward are the interest rates. Most of us that have ridden out that 2 or 3 corrections can remember double-digit interest rates in the 80s when that last correction happened. And even in 2006, when the market corrected a little bit, we were still looking at 6% interest rates. Today, we're looking at about 2.8% to 3.25%, depending upon your credit. So that's unprecedented in terms of historic ups and downs in real estate. That low interest rate will also soften any correction that we see coming in down the road. And then last, we also still have very good buyer demand. We anticipating many of our properties are still in multiple offer situations with sometimes 2, 5, 8 offers. And what happens in those situations is the seller's a happy person because usually they're getting asking price. They may get a little bit more than asking price. But in some cases where we've had 3 to 5 offers, that means there's quite a few people who are disappointed. They didn't get the property. And a lot of those buyers are getting buyer fatigue. Some of them have made 3, 4, 5 offers on property and haven't won those properties. And they're getting a little tired. That might eventually, they may eventually fall out of trying just because they don't have the energy anymore, and they may wait until a correction. But those 3 factors will, we believe, really buffer any correction we see in the market. Now, the next question, and the most important question, when are we going to see a correction? Should we sell now? Should we sell in the future? What's the timing going to be on this? In terms of the general, this is what most economists who are surveyed are saying, that they expect an increase in housing inventory, which will soften demand. 43% believe it'll be the second half of 2021. In the Valley here, I think there is strong demand through at least September, barring any unforeseen economic crisis that would affect all of us. So I really project that we'll have strong demand and a healthy market through into the fall. So if you're considering selling, now is a good time. Now's the time to maximize your return on your investment. One of the questions that you should really ask yourself is, if I do sell and I maximize my investment at this point, what am I going to do? And that slows a lot of people down, because you're going to be turned around into that buyer market where you're trying to replace what you have here in the Valley, and you might be very challenged to get that done right now.
Diane, this is Bob Carper from New Hampshire Log and Timber Homes.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Good.
Nice to see you.
Where is that increased inventory going to come from?
Well, I think what I'm starting to just see the edge of right now is people are really evaluating the fact that they can get the highest value for their property right now in history, and a lot of them throughout their ownership. And having people reach out to get a broker price opinion on the property. And a lot of times, for the first time in history, I typically deal with things when you go to approach someone. Everybody who owns a home really believes that their home is the most special. And it is true. It is a home. It's connected emotionally. But most of the time I'm in a position of sort of indicating to people that maybe the value isn't what you think it is compared to what else is out there. For the first time in my career, I'm in a position of saying to people, your house is worth a lot more than you think. And that is the case right now. It's a really nice position to be in. And in some cases, it's significantly higher than people realize. And so when people start looking at that number, if they're in a position where they have a choice, maybe they're approaching retirement, maybe they're looking at spending more time in a different area due to family, they're really making that hard choice to really get their home sold. And I think that the more people that begin to look at the value, you're going to see more of the existing sellers make a choice, take advantage of that market and get the most value for their home. And I think that's where the increased inventory will come from.
The only issue I see is that if those sellers are looking to move up to another house, they're going to be spending a lot more money, and they're going to run into the same situation of limited inventory to buy another house.
That's very true. I think that one of the things I'm starting to hear a little bit of whisper about is that we've had this big influx into the valley right now of people that have come from other areas. And they're really living here as primary home. I think once we get vaccinated, and people are saying that's probably going to be in the August timeframe, people are going to go nuts. It's going to be like the years after the Depression, the Roaring 20s, when if all of a sudden they've had to postpone their European vacations for 2 or 3 years, and now they can go to Europe. Everyone's going to be heading to Europe. So I think that we'll see a reverse of what we've had, where people have been stuck in their home and really wanting to improve that home to being really much more mobile and excited to travel. And when you see them do that, you may see them reverse that trend and go from, the primary type home back to something a little smaller and be visiting multiple locations again.
Right. Thanks for the question, Bob. That was a great question. Kathleen, you're on mute. Let's unmute you.
And every single time you turn on your TV, your radio, look at social media, all you're hearing about is the housing market. So it is an exciting time, but it depends on whether or not you think it's a wild, crazy good time or a totally frustrating time, depends on whether you're a buyer or a seller. So we're going to look at the local market. So let me find my presentation and share my screen. Okay, so as we said a few times, there are 3 things that are driving this market: the low mortgage rates, the buyer demand, and the lack of inventory. So now I want to look at what has been actually happening. So we're going to look first here briefly at Carroll County statistics, and then we'll go into the local. So this is a March over March. So they're looking at Carroll March to March and then year to date. So last year, March was the stay-at-home order. So we were in our houses, we were selling some things, and there are things that had been under contract pre-COVID, and there were 80 sales. This March, 83. So it's a slight uptick. But if you look at year to date, instead of the 3.8% increase, it's a 25% increase when you go from January 1st through the end of March. And you can see here the median sales prices have jumped up. The sales volume has jumped up. Days on market has drastically reduced, and the pending sales are up. So that is, let's see, single families. Now, if we look at the same thing in condos, because there might be the condo market is primarily in Bartlett, Jackson, and Conway. And we look at that, you can see in Carroll County, it was up from 17 to 21, March over March, but year to date, we're up to 50 closings. So that's an increase. The median sales price in the condos increased, as well as the dollars. Days on market, you can see that significant reduction, and pending sales are way up. So we're going to look at things 2 ways in single family homes. We're going to look at all of these towns in our area. So we've got Albany, Bartlett, Conway, Eaton, Freedom, Hales location, Harts location, Jackson, Madison, Ossipee, and Tamworth. Those are the towns that I used for this data. And this data came from our MLS, which is the New England Real Estate Network. So if we look at 2019, there were 124 sales this time period. So it's like from the first of the year through April 25th. They had 124. In 2020, we had 128 sales, but this year 164. So we are talking about a lack of inventory. Part of that is perception, because they come on the market and boom, they're gone. And there are still so many more people looking to buy. So it feels, I think, even worse than the reality. I mean, it feels that way to the buyers because they're being unsuccessful in securing a home. But you look at the number, 164 sales. So you look at your days on market in this whole area, 59, 38, down to 12. So that's 2019, 2020, 2021. So you can see that percent of change. It's way down for the market time. The sale price, it actually went down in 2020, but again, we had the stay at home. And so there was like a shrinking of the market at that time. But then you get to this year and the price, the median price has gone up to $299. So that's like an increase of 25% over last year. And you look at the sales volume here, 38 million, 36 million. This year, 59 million. So we have more closings, higher prices, and that has been like a higher volume. So that is that general area. Now, when we looked at who was going to be on today, a lot of them seem to be interested in the Jackson, Bartlett, Conway area. So now this is just focusing on that area, those three towns. So we had in 2019, 66 sales, the next year, 60. Remember the stay at home. Then we come to this year, 80 sales of condos. So that's an uptick of 33 over last year, 33% more. The market time for the condos went down dramatically, 45 days, 30 days, 8 days. And you can look at your sale price. Now look at the difference between 2019 and 2021. From 282 to 306 up to 363.5. We have seen some really surprising numbers in the condos. And then we look at the sales volume and you can see it jump up in millions, 23 down to 20 during the stay at home, and then up to 32 million this year. So what I thought I would do is have it, if we can look at these. So this is 219. If you know about what you think your house might be worth, you can see where the bulk of the sales were. So that hasn't changed much. It's in the bulk of them are under 400 and under. You see the most sales. And as you go up in price, the number of sales go down. So you have a narrower market, the more expensive price range you're in. And if you go over here, so this is now 2021, you can see how many you have. This is now under, you see it's more, it's bumped up. So you've got 16 in the 400. So that's a change. So now instead of saying the bulk are under 400, the bulk are under 500 now. And you have a few more on the higher end. So
Kathleen, can I
Yep.
just, quick question, those numbers, 80 sales, 60 sales, those are year-to-date numbers, correct?
they're not exactly year to date. I did it on the 25th. So you could say, yes, today's the 27th. I compiled these as of the 25th.
Okay, I don't want to look at the fact that some of those price points had 0 sales and think that they didn't sell a single house for the year, but that might have been first quarter of that year did not see a sale in that price point.
I am comparing the exact same time period over 3 different years.
Correct.
So
Okay.
as it says, it is January 1st through April 25th of 2019, 2020, and 2021. So yes, it's like the first quarter plus.
Plus, sure.
Yeah. I mean, you had to be consistent to compare.
Yeah.
Looking at condos, you can see there weren't as much of a change, but 53 to 50 to 62. So it's up 24% over last year for the number of units sold in this time period. But look at your market time, 42, 14, down to 4 days. And that's a median. So that is down like 71%. Your sale price went from 195 to 235 to 263. So that's a significant increase, as well as the sales volume. So yes, we are in a hot market. We need more housing inventory. And the question is, are we in a housing bubble? Well, according to the National Association of Realtors Chief Economic Advisor, Lawrence Young, he says this is not a bubble, it is simply a lack of supply. With this kind of demand, I can't see that it's going to go way down anytime soon, unless, as Diane said, something unforeseen happens. But of course, we have seen something unforeseen, which was a pandemic. There have been pandemics before, but as humans, we have short memories and all felt it could never happen in our lifetime. And here we are. So yeah, surprises happen. But when I first started, interest rates went up to 17 and 19%. So looking at the way the government supports the housing industry by keeping interest rates down, and it looks as if that's going to continue for a while, I think we will still have a robust market, which will be difficult for buyers. I mean, we're seeing things with 10, 15. There was a house recently that had, in 1 week, it had 67 showings and 35 offers. Now, tell me those buyers weren't depressed going through that. So.
Kathleen, I think the thing that's different, much different in this market, as compared to all other markets, is this pandemic has driven buyers out of big cities, and they're buying homes in our area. So it's hard to compare this market to other markets because we've never had this situation before.
Good
That's
point,
true.
Bob.
And that's what I said. We have short memories. I mean, there have been other things that have just torn people's lives apart. So things have changed and we're having to adapt to things. And as humans, we don't really like change.
Right. So I think this would be a great time to segue into new construction. Brendan, you've dealt a lot with new construction over the past couple months. Would you like to talk to us a bit about what you're seeing?
I would love to, Debbie. I would
Thank
love
you.
to. And I'll acknowledge that Bob had spoke up, and it seems like Bob works in some of the new construction side. And then we knew that Greg Grinnell was going to be here, so I certainly would open it up to them here in a minute to see if they would like to make some comments on what they're seeing on their side. I certainly have dealt with a lot of developers and a lot of new construction over the years in my career, but that's on the real estate side. So I'm not necessarily, by all means, the one standing on top of your foundation when it's poured. So if they're interested to chime in a second. The new construction market is a bonanza as well. It has seen some tremendous growth. I started to look into the multiple listing service for some of the data, and it turns out new construction, as it has in the past, starts to disappear from the multiple listing service because it goes into the private build side. If 4 or 5 years ago, there was a lot of new construction out there, that you could look at some market data for price per square foot because we had access to that. But a lot of the builds that are going up and the keys that are being handed over are private sales with contractors these days. That's absolutely positive. We know people are booked out, many through this year and some certainly into next year. And that's been a positive. If you look at land sales, if you want to build a house, you got to own a piece of land likely. And the land sales alone, looking year to date, similar to the Kathleen's numbers, from Conway, Madison, Albany, up through Bartlett, Jackson, the days on the market from January 1st to about today, the average day on the market right now for a piece of land is 6 days. And that's the average. There are some that are sitting out there a little bit longer, but lots are going fast, the ones that are being marketed. Last year at the same time frame, it was 134 days. So you can see that that is a drastic jump from 134-day average time on the market to 6 days average time on the market for a piece of land. The pricing fluctuation went from $50,000 last year at this time frame for an average lot to $89,000. And I suspect that the builders are seeing that. They used to be able to pick up lots for $50,000 to $60,000, maybe some with some utilities available a little higher, but now those lots are going from the 80s to the 100,000s to get into a decent buildable lot in this region. So we're definitely seeing that demand shoot up there. People who are buying lots, most of the time with an intention to build. The builders that we work with often have seen just, their phones are just ringing with demand. Can you? Do I build is a quick question. Should I build? And I think there's a lot of reasons to do that. We see a lot of demand there for somebody that just wants something new. They want something that has a brand new boiler, a brand new roof, brand new floors, new kitchen. They just want that quality. But with that quality comes some lifespan. And we see some retirees choosing to build their home and they'll joke, this is the last home I'll ever own. Modern medicine might change that, but it is one of those things where we see that the new factor for people has definitely played into that. Custom design, I think Diane hit a really key topic that homes are serving us in many different ways than they did 2 years ago. And finding the floor plan or the design that fits your family may be better suited to building a custom home. And we see that with people building 2-bedroom homes that have a lot of square footage to accommodate offices, workout room, workshops, things like that. And then specific features like we talked about, specific rooms, specific features that you want for your house. So the do I build is certainly a personal reason, personal discussion. And then how do I get started? So I'm going to pull up this one slide real quick. And so it's been a bonanza for the builders. But if you can see this, wave frantically if you're not looking at it. But there's a graph of average annual units constructed, okay? So you can see that our building is actually below the average. So, and I think some of that might be, and Greg or Bob can speak up to this if they disagree, but some of this is due to some labor situations. We lost a lot of that labor force and even some builders back in the 2008 to 2010. You can see those numbers plummet 2011, 12. The demand for new construction was not there. And so the labor to build these homes is slowly trying to keep up with that green upward trend that you see. And material this year, as you can see, it almost is plateauing. It hasn't hit that average mark there. If you can see down here, we're kind of climbing appropriately and then we soften. And some of that this year has been availability of contractors to do housing starts and then materials. Getting hold of appropriate materials at the appropriate price to continue that upward trend in building. We have a little ways to go. You can see the red lines in early 2003, 4, 5. a lot of people experienced that market, and that was our last big uptick and big push before the 2008 market crash.
Brendan, that data shows units. Do you have data that shows sales volume?
I don't right now. Two reasons. One, the MLS is misleading right now, and Bob, I can look into that to try to get the number that might speak to it better might be permits for new construction, which I don't have from the towns yet. And the reason I say that is because units sold different ways. There can be a spec house, which is in the multiple listing service, marketed as an almost or completed house, which will sell for its full price. There's houses that we sell as building packages that are being sold on paper. So you get an idea of what your design is, and then that translates into a finished product. And then there are land sales, which we have the data on, because a lot of that goes through the MLS, but the houses get built on the side. So if you, Greg, other builders that we know in the Valley are building a home, that is not going into the multiple listing service. And nor is it often going into, say, the registry of deeds, because the registry keeps track of the property you bought. You bought the land, they don't know about the house. Does that make sense, Bob?
Yeah, but my point is that if you look at that data, the price per unit is probably a lot higher.
A lot higher. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah. So
And also on that, that is, Bob, that is those are national units. So I think it's, national numbers that were compiled and, not something that most of this other stuff, like we put together those numbers, I put together on a local basis, but that slide is a national slide.
Yeah.
Great. I'd love to hear from Greg what he's seeing as some of the challenges in new construction.
We have something called the 3 L's in the building trade, called lots, labor, and lumber. Brendan, you just talked about lots, no big secret there. Labor's been a problem for quite a while. Lumber right now, I have a little fun thing for you guys. So a year ago, one sheet of 3/4 inch of Vanatech was $32.50. 2 hours ago, it was $80.44. I don't even know what the math is. $60, the difference in one sheet. 7/16 OSB a year ago was around $10. 2 hours ago was $43. 5/8 CDX plywood a year ago was $23. 2 hours ago, it was $64 a sheet. One 2x6 was $5.50. Today it's almost $13 for one 2x6 8-footer. That's huge. It's just, I'm sure Bob can certainly jump in, but it's out of control. I had a price of 5/8 plywood 2.5 weeks ago, $44. It's gone up $20 in less than 3 weeks. It is just, so if these prices drop off for spec houses for sales, there won't be any more spec houses.
Right. Now, how are you seeing supplies when you are building?
Product availability. There's a decking that I used to use. Keep in mind, used to. Right now, it's 27 weeks out. It's like,
yeah.
What do you do if you're a 10-footer short? We'll see you in the fall. It's some windows now. Windows got down to, over the past 20 years, 2 weeks out. Some windows now are out 11 weeks. Kitchens, years ago, we used to order the kitchens when we started framing. Over the past 20 years, kitchens have gotten down to 2 to 3 weeks. Kitchens are back up to 15 weeks. Product availability has just gone nuts. Some vinyl siding, we can't even get because of the colors. There's resins. They're saying that a lot of the plywoods and a lot of the vinyl siding and some of the flooring that has resins in it are being affected exponentially. So it is just absolutely bonkers what's going on out there. And nobody seems to have one answer. COVID was a huge part of it, but it is just nuts right now as far as new builds go. So I'm actually doing remodeling and having fun right now.
And
Getting ready for 2 new builds, but
Yeah.
One of the customers, I don't know if they're going to hang on or not, because it's not going to be till the fall. As far
Right.
as watching this, I obviously have an updated pricing clause, and I've been just updating them recently. And these prices that are 2 hours old to me, I was like, what? The 5/8 CDX went up $20 in 2.5 weeks for one sheet of plywood.
And I would jump in there. I mean, Greg, I appreciate that because that really puts it in perspective. And before this meeting, Greg sent us a letter from some of his suppliers, and it's a global situation. I mean, it's pretty crazy to sit here and say the Suez Canal can put a factor into or the Texas power outage. It really messed with the resin production,
Totally.
which was in that letter that Greg sent us.
Totally.
So it's a global situation. I just talked to a customer that just got a 17% increase in their cost to build their home. And, break that out via different price points. 17% adjustment over a house you thought you were going to build is a huge change. And so I think we've seen a lot of people trying to push forward and absorb that cost or work with the bank to put a cushion in there. But that's going to be a factor unless that global supply and pricing come under control.
Right.
Right.
We got out of it in 2020, but 2020, it hit our industry with like a brick.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're going to get away from it this year. I think this year is just going to be silly. I hope next year's got to be better. It can't be worse.
I have a question actually for Ed from Northway. Ed, are you seeing an increase in construction loans?
Yeah, so I'd say on a weekly basis, in a normal year, I might get maybe one call a week. And now I'm fielding probably 3 to 4 calls for construction loans and probably more than that for land loans for people who want to get the land and then go build something. So it's almost like the first-time home buyers. You try to do a first-time home buyer pre-qualification. They're qualified for $120,000. You give them a letter and say, good luck finding something. It's kind of the same thing when I do a pre-qualification for a construction loan, because I'm like, here you go. You're pre-qualified for that amount. Good luck keeping that price because the materials go up. It's just a moving target. That said, this year, more construction loans than ever. They're in process. People are getting them. It's time consuming, I guess, to put the numbers together with their builder, but I'm seeing them come in. I just put one in today for new construction. I got another one going in tomorrow for new construction. So if they're lucky enough to find somebody that can do the work and lock in a price, or they have the money to pay for the overruns if it occurs, it just seems like there is a pent-up demand and they're willing to spend the money no matter what to get what they want is kind of the impression I'm getting.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ed. There's a question here from Lynn about price per square foot for construction. It is all over the board, and I will, Greg's going to walk away from this discussion, but or Bob, you can speak up as well. I mean, that number's all over the place, but it is, and it certainly depends on your preferences. But I mean, we priced out a house last year in Madison, beautiful home, middle of the range, and we were at about $84 a square foot last year. And that does not include the land, but the structure, and 184. These numbers, again, it's hard to build off of something like that. That was last year. I would say that people are starting almost at the 200 a square foot and then going as high as 3 to 325. The sky's the limit. You could build a house at 500 a square foot. But
if I could comment on that, Brendan, when I speak to clients about price per square foot, it's really not a good figure to try and use because it's relative to what you want to build. To quantify that for you a little bit, the if you come to me and you say, I want a 2,000 square foot house, what is the price per square foot going to be? Well, maybe you want unique Italian marble on all your countertops. You want imported tile. You want
Right.
handcrafted cabinetry. So you could have a square foot cost as high as 500 a square foot, or in a range that, you know, Brendan's talking in 180. 180, you're going to have vinyl floors. You're going to have maybe only one bath. So it's really, before you can talk about price per square foot, you have to talk about three different things. Number one, what are your goals in terms of quality of finishes? Number two, what builder are you going to use? Are you going to use somebody who's going to build you a modular home, or are you going to use a craftsman who's going to hand carve your handrails? And lastly, the thing that's going to contribute to your cost per square foot of construction, not just per square foot of the house, is your land cost. We have lots that are as small as a half an acre that will go for 200,000, or you can find a parcel in some of the more spread out areas in the valley where you may get an acre or 2 acres and get it for $70,000 to $100,000. So before you can even look at that, you need to really self-reflect on where you're going with your project and what your flexibility is.
To tie into what Greg said, I think what's happening with all these prices and material prices is it's pricing the market for people who want to build a house to people who have unlimited resources. And a lot of the people we're building houses for now are building with cash, and they don't care.
Yeah.
They're going to spend whatever it takes.
That's a fair point, Bob. I mean, we do see some of the people jumping into the market. And I think, Bob, to tie that into a point you made earlier, where we're seeing some people come to the Valley from markets we haven't seen, influx from maybe New York City, or it's relative. We've seen people react to yearly taxes on our properties, and some say this is, well, we're on a fixed income and this is going to hurt. And others have said, you should see my taxes in New Jersey. This is nothing. And so price per square foot will be relative depending on the buyer that comes to the table. And Diane makes an excellent point that number will be a wild spread based on the features you want to build into a home: walkout basement, level lot. We're not even talking about the site work and drilling a well versus community water. There are a lot of variables there, and that's where the two benefits: either connecting with a real estate broker that can help give you some advice on where you're headed there, but more importantly, beyond us, you need a reputable builder who can sit with you and understand the numbers and make sure that you're being realistic with the figures you're putting on the table. We do have quite a few names in the Valley.
Brenda, can I just add some comments about some trending things that I'm seeing in conversations when it comes to not only new construction, that I think are a little bit of a reverse of some of the trends that we've been seeing in the last 5 to 10 years. And I don't know whether they're COVID related, but that's what I'm guessing. It's interesting to me to be talking to people and see them again wanting their own bathrooms. We had a trend for a while where people wanted smaller spaces. They wanted to be all gathering together. And now that trend is like, I'm hearing a lot of, I want a 4th bedroom and it has to have its own bath. They want a gathering place in a separate area for the kids, and they want their kids to have their own bathroom separate from where the adults are gathering. So there seems to be a subtle trend towards spaces of privacy again. I think that everybody's sort of in the same home, and they're wanting to make sure that their personal space is respected. So are you seeing that in your construction, Bob and Greg?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for years I thought people would build smaller homes, but I'm not seeing it.
It hasn't happened.
It's not happened, and people are building bigger homes with more features than ever before.
But Bob, your niche is a very high end.
I agree. I agree with that. Yes.
And
over
there
the
are, I mean,
years-
there are small homes, the tiny living. If you drive, I've seen a few pop up if you're driving around in town. So that, you know, that didn't go away. They still exist. But what we are seeing in the new construction realm is, I agree with Diane, is people are looking for space, vaulted ceilings, open concepts, it's a spread it's a widespread within the price point market. I mean, there's some new construction happening under 400,000. To get under 400, to get under 350 starts to get very difficult with the costs. But so we're seeing most of that building happening probably closer to the 550, 6 to 8, and then up into the, you know, the quality custom homes in the $1 million plus.
Our area is a second home market, and so the smaller homes are quite popular, and they are popular to use in the short-term rental. So I think maybe we might take a little dive into short-term rentals, since that seems to be a top topic going on right now. Brendan, you're involved in this. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because there isn't a whole lot decided yet from the town. But Brendan, what are you hearing?
I am on I'm a member of the White Mountain Board of Realtors. I'm a director on that board. And within that board, we have a short-term rental committee that's been participating in that conversation. So we've been watching that pulse across the various towns. And there's not a lot to say. There's a lot of evolving components to this right now, especially in the town of Conway. Jackson has an ordinance in place. So if you're in the town of Jackson or considering buying into the town of Jackson, you can find it on their website. It's not too hard to track down. And they do have some structure to allowing you to rent your home in a short-term rental situation. So one of the few towns that has taken the step forward to pass an ordinance. It's evolving, but it has made some progress. Bartlett and Madison have been largely quiet. There's a planning board member on the committee from Bartlett, and I've attended some of the Zoom meetings for Bartlett selectmen. And they've been kind of a watch and wait scenario in Bartlett and Madison. So there's not plenty of renting still going on, but not a lot of vocal comments coming from the elected officials in those towns. The Conway is the biggest topic, at least in the Conway Daily Sun. They're selling many newspapers because of it, or at least advertisements, since the newspaper's free. And Conway, currently there was a meeting today open for public comment, and there were a lot of out-of-town owners that came to the selectmen's meeting today at 4 o'clock to speak to their short-term rental ownership. The ballot measure in Conway to define short-term rentals as a use in the town of Conway in the residential district did not pass. That's not to be interpreted as necessarily that they're a ban. One article not passing doesn't mean they're a ban, but the town has come out to define them within their ordinance to say that they are not an allowed use. There are passionate opinions on either side, and the town is certainly diving into it to try to move forward. The latest we're hearing is that they are leaning towards, they had another closed door session today with their attorney after the selectmen's meeting, but they are leaning towards notification of violation. So the word cease and desist hasn't shown up yet, but maybe a notification of violation, which sounds like a cease and desist if you're getting a letter that says you're in violation of the town code. It's definitely becoming a factor in the buying and selling market of Conway. We haven't seen a rush to put second homes on the market, but we have seen some buyers pivot their interest to the Bartlett and Jackson and maybe Madison markets. And if renting is a high priority in their search criteria, they are starting to avoid Conway due to the uncertainty right now. So ever evolving, each town has its own stance on this specific situation. I will say that Jed Bradley, the local representative, has been in front of the governor recently, and there's been a big push to write letters to the governor to ask the governor to start to put an eyeball on this situation. And the wheels of politics move slow, probably for a reason. And the state stepping in here might be a benefit, but it's not going to be a quick solution to the uncertainties we have right now. So if there's questions on that, we can certainly dive into that, but we don't have a lot of answers on where that's going to go.
Brendan, do the homeowners who are opposed to short-term rentals understand that if they eliminate short-term rentals, that it's going to affect their price of their home?
I think they do. We've been saying that for years as associated with the Kearsarge Lighting Precinct, who has been in Superior Court for 2.5 years over rental restrictions in that part of North Conway. So the realtor community, but I would say the short-term rental committee has been trying to convey that if you take the general inventory and restrict rentals, you will lose a certain portion. So we talked about kind of 4 buyer groups in the beginning: investors, vacation homeowners, primary homeowners, and retirees fall into the primary homeowner category. The investors will likely completely stay away until there's some more certainty. The vacation homeowners, many of them like the ability to be able to rent, but not all of them, and many don't. Many do come to the table and say, I have no interest in renting, but I do want a second home. But we will certainly shrink one of the quadrants of that buyer pool because of that decision. If you talk to the individuals that are anti-rental, and I've spoken to many, they have a lot of valid points, but it usually revolves around nuisance, noise, and disturbances on neighboring properties. And it's not always easy to, someone looks you in the eye and says, I can't sleep on Friday and Saturday nights, to say, well, you may lose 13.5% value in your house. Those conversations don't align with each other. And so I think in general, the restricting your house for a rental, similar to taking 100 acres and restricting it to no development and putting it in conservation, it still has value, but you will diminish your buyer pool and it will shrink the potential for increased demand. So I think we will start to see it in Conway if we don't come to some kind of resolution, or if Conway does start to send out actual cease and desist letters. I think we will see that some of this increased demand move to these other towns.
Well, thank you, Brendan. It sounds like it's something we're going to have to wait and see, kind of play the wait and see game on that.
It's an exciting real estate market right now. Whether you're jumping in the sense of a buyer or a seller, I guess it's easier to quantify a seller's excitement, as Diane mentioned, that when you sit down at the table and say, well, I think this is what your house is worth, there a lot of bug eyes in the positive, a lot of excitement, as opposed to years ago, we'd say, I think we might be able to get this. And we were below what they were hoping for. There's lots of positives still out there. If you're a buyer looking to grab something in this town, it can be much of an uphill fight, but we're here to support you and find some ways to make success a better opportunity.
Deb, and I'll just add one thing real quick is another thing that's driving everything. You already talked about it a couple times. It's just the low rates. And if you look at it, a construction loan, Northway sees that there's an opportunity out there for new construction, and their program was revamped not long ago. We're 2.99% on a 30-year fix for a construction loan up to $1 million.
That's
so
unheard of.
so that's what I'm saying. That's adding to the frenzy. That's enticing a lot of people to go ahead and take the plunge, even if they know that they're going to be possibly paying more than what they anticipated. They're still doing it because money's cheap. And then the people that can't build, they all of a sudden have a ton of equity in their homes. They go refinance under 3%. They're pulling equity out to do the improvements in their house. So it's driving the market, definitely.
I think a big takeaway from what everybody has said, Debbie, is that the bottom line is people really want to be here. And it doesn't matter what type of environment we're in, whether it's the really intense environment we have now, even when things soften, regardless of their lifestyle, there's a property and a value. Well, the value is getting a little bit higher, but a property size, a location, and a type of lifestyle that will meet the needs of almost anybody. So if you own property here, or if you're selling property here, or if you're building property here, there's a long history of everybody wanting to come to the mountains. So it's a great place to invest. It's a great place to live. And it's a great place to buy and sell, regardless of what you're buying and selling.
Right, I think I am going to wrap this up and let everyone go to dinner.
Thanks,
Deb,
Deb.
Just like to say, I just tuned in because we have a place to go at 7. So Jerry and I took turns. So he listened to the first half, I listened to the second half. And I just want to say what you said. Everybody wants to be there, and we can't wait. And we're going to be there the 3rd of June for 4 months, and we can't wait to be in our beautiful Mount Washington Valley and see you all.
Great.
thank you, Deb.
Thank you.
Hi,
night.
Kathleen. Hi, Diane. Congratulations.
Hi, Anita. How are you? Good to see you.
Nice to see you too, and see you soon.
Okay, great.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie.
Hey, thank you guys.
All right.
And thanks to our guests who came to our meeting.